Sacerdotus Hangouts, the broadcast that answers doubts about God, the Catholic Church, science, philosophy, and other worldly topics figured out.
Welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts. Ask Sacerdotus. A couple of hours. We had and I'm exhausted, as you can probably tell from the lack of energy in my voice, and also my not that strong today. But nevertheless, I want to try to fit this broadcast in because several of you, in particular atheists, have tweeted to me some questions, and there's I believe they're very good questions that need to be addressed and answered. And I want to get it out of the way because the longer the questions are procrastinated, then the more likely these atheists will say, "Oh, well, he doesn't have any answers to them, so that means Catholicism is wrong. That means theism is wrong." Blah blah blah. So before we get into the questions, I just want to speak a little bit about the March for Life. The March for Life was excellent this year. I think it was the largest ever. There were so many people. Got to meet many new people, new friends, priests, seminarians, religious, laity, people from other faiths, people from no faith, atheists for life, feminists for life, different groups like that, which surprised many people. They actually do exist. There are atheists out there. There are feminists out there that are against abortion. There are pro-life that want to see an end to abortion. So that's a good thing. For those people out there that claim that the March for Life is a Jesus freak gathering or a religious thing, that's actually not true. Even though religion is used a lot in the march, everybody's welcome because, again, the whole theme of the march is for life. We want to protect life, human life, from conception to natural death. And it makes absolute sense because in the United States, where I am at, many of you who follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and so forth are from other nations. So I just want to make it clear that I'm from the United States, and the United States holds the principles that all men are created equal under God, with the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, liberty and pursuit of happiness. We live in a culture of hedonism, but people forget about life and what the right to life really means. And just a week ago, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who fought hard to get rights for African Americans. For a century or so, or decades ago, were seen under the law as 3/5 human. Science even projected this idea that African Americans, Black people, were only 3/5 human, and that the rest was just that they were cattle. Hence, they could be slaves and work the fields and so forth. Just think about that for a moment. You who love America and say America is the greatest country in the world, blah blah blah. In America, this idea existed, and if it wasn't for Dr. King and others who protested, little by little, it's not there yet, but little by little, we are achieving that dream where we can all tolerate one another and not look at each other as the white guy, that Black guy, that Latino guy, that Asian guy, that Arab Indian guy there, but just that guy, that girl, that man, that woman. So we're not there yet, but hopefully soon we will get to that point where we could realize that dream of coexisting without any issue, without any prejudice, without any racism, without any condescension of a particular group over another group or whatnot. Hopefully that will be a thing of the past. So I'm glad that March for Life was a success. As many of you know, Donald Trump is the president now, and I'm starting to like the guy. I know I offered some criticisms in the past last year via Sacerdotus Hangouts and Sacerdotus Radio, but I was a bit concerned because when he was the president elect, he was backtracking a lot on some of the things. He would say he was going to get Obamacare, and then he said, "Well, maybe we'll keep part of it." And I was starting to worry. I said, "Wait a minute, this guy lied." Democrats said that this guy was lying. He was just making things up. But then when he took office, he immediately signed a executive order easing the burden of Obamacare. Then he signed on Monday restricting federal funding for abortion overseas, and eventually now the bill's going through the House. It passed in the House, and hopefully will reach his desk where he will ban federal funding of taxpayer dollars to abortion clinics of Planned Parenthood in the 50 states in the union. So far so good. And in the March for Life he called, he said he has our back pretty much, and that he supports us and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to see what happens afterwards if he continues that trend and hopefully follows through with everything that he has promised, which is surprising because politicians usually say anything to get elected. He claims he was not a politician, which is true. He never ran for office. I mean, that's the great thing about this country. I mean, America has its problems. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those people that worships a nation, but it's the nation I was born in, the US of A. And it might not be the perfect nation in the world, the best nation. Well, I mean, it depends on your perspective, but Catholic moral perspective, it's not the best country in the world, but it's pretty close. And for the idea that the common man, that somebody that's not a politician, can become the leader of the free world, is just amazing. It just shows the awesomeness of the United States of America. So, with regards to President Trump, I want to wish him the best, and hopefully he'll continue doing what he needs to do to protect human life and whatnot. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing with the immigration. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I've already been followed on Twitter by a couple of people, fellow Catholics, religious and whatnot, who are social justice fanatics and whatnot. I'm more of a rationalist. I like to think before I let my heart take over. I mean, some people may see that as bad, but I mean, it has worked fine for me. I love to use my brain before using my heart. Because you see, the heart, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, jumps to conclusions. The heart is blind, let's just say, and it gets human beings into trouble. But if we reason, then it shouldn't be that much of a issue. So let me get into the questions, and I have a few of them here. I'm going to try to share them so that you can see what I'm looking at. Let's see if it works. Hopefully Google will work with me and not fight back or whatnot. But here is the first question, and it's from Truth Goddess Tot 44. It's an interesting handle. And this person writes, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, writes, what are your main reasons for believing? Well, I mean, the question can be answered so many ways. I could do different shows on why I believe, but just for the purpose of keeping it short, the reason why I believe is because, from my perspective, investigating as an atheist, questioning and whatnot, I realized that made the most sense in light of science, reasoning, logic, philosophy, and so forth. And also historically speaking, I might add. And the reason why I say that, and I mentioned this in previous broadcasts, is that Catholicism is very organized in its doctrinal system. Now, granted, Islam is similar and Judaism and so forth, but the difference is that what we see with Islam and Judaism is that there's all these people that call themselves Jews and Muslims, but then there's factions within them. Each one claims to be a Jew, a Muslim, but they see the Quran in a different way. They see the teachings of Muhammad, Abraham, Moses in different ways. Now, one may say, well, what about the Protestants? Well, I'll get to that in a little bit, but Islam and Judaism do not have a magisterium, a teaching office. They do not have the Pope or the bishops in union with them who sort everything out and teach what is supposed to be accepted. They do not have that. And what happens? You have all this chaos. You have all these different Islamic groups claiming to be Islamic. And we see that now with ISIS and all of these different groups. I can't even remember all the names. And they fight amongst each other. The Sunnites and all these people, they fight amongst each other, and they claim they're more Muslim than the next person. With ISIS, they behead other Muslims because they feel that they are the ones that are really representing Islam. With the Jews, with the Judaism, we have the Orthodox Jews, we have the Hasidics, we have the conservative Jews, liberal Jews, progressive Jews who allow women rabbis and so forth. And again, they do not have a central authority. So you have all these different people presenting the religion of Judaism in so many different ways. And of course, they get into battles with each other. And I'm not even going to go into the whole Jews for Jesus thing because that's an interesting anomaly. But with Catholicism, everything is so structured, which I love. For those of you who own a catechism or have seen a catechism, everything's so structured there with notes, with citations. I remember the first time I got a catechism. I got one of those little white ones, little pocket-sized ones. And I was reading through it, going on the bus, going on the train in the Bronx, New York, going to school, going on to college. And I could read, okay, this is what the church says about God, about Jesus, about blah, 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 whatever. And then it has the footnotes, which expound even more. So then I went and looked on that, did research on that. And it built on from there, from there, from there. And the way everything is structured, it was logically sound, to me at least. And I'm sure to many others. And then reading Aquinas and Augustine and so forth, I just got the impression that this religion was the real deal. They went to so much effort to organize it in such a way to explain it, using even the ancient Greek philosophical methods of reasoning and logic in order to present the teachings of Christ. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason, apart from the religion itself, from Catholicism, is science. And being a student of the sciences of physics, biology, psychology, even though some people complain and say psychology is not a science, but I disagree. That's a topic for another show. Science, in particular physics, just studying it, learning how the universe works or how we think it works. Because that's the funny thing about physics is that we create all these different models and we say, aha, we finally figured out the universe. Then lo and behold, a particle appears, or we discover a particle that we never discovered before. And this particle behaves differently, completely defies everything. It doesn't make sense. There's no way to explain how this particle works with the rest of the particles. And it just throws everything off. So you just feel like slamming the chessboard, so to speak, spilling over the Monopoly board out of frustration because you thought you finally won. And then the person comes and has a strategy over you, and you get upset and you throw the board all over the place, spilling the pieces of the game. But with the knowledge that we do have of physics, I just started to realize that everything was too perfect. Even though atheists claim that uh, an appendix means that there's no God and blah blah blah. I mean, that's just nonsensical, false um, conflation fallacy. But honestly speaking, when you study physics and you learn about the particles and the forces that work in nature and whatnot, you start to realize that the whole idea of design and intelligent design and programming makes sense. It does make sense. Look at the atomic structure of an atom and how it works. How within that structure there's electrons and neutrons and quarks and leptons and mutons and so forth and so forth. You start to realize that this could not happen all by itself by chance. The universe could not just boom, the Big Bang happened and everything just happened to form the way it did just by chance. It just does not make any sense. And even on the temporal scale, a spatial temporal factor, let's say the universe was created by chance, out of probability. It just happened to expand in the way it did and it just formed the way it did just by chance, by probability. There's a problem with that argument because probability requires time, it requires temporal consistency. When you throw a die, when you play the lot machine or whatnot, time is working there. Because if there's no time, we are just frozen. We do not exist, technically speaking. We just freeze because there's no time keeping everything in motion. So when we go back through time as far as we can to the point of the Big Bang, the laws of physics break down. And what happens? Time breaks down as well until the point of the Big Bang where there is no time. And Stephen Hawking speaks about this, and he wrote about this in his blog, his website, that there was no time prior to the Big Bang event. So without time, there cannot be chance. There cannot be probability. It's not possible. So right there, it just does not make sense that the universe just happened to come together the way it did, just by chance alone. Because you need time, you need probability in order to do these things. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So that's some of the reasons in regards to physics, and there's more, but I mean, I'll just stay here for around this question. Now, quickly, biology, just the structure of DNA right there. Another thing, the program, the DNA, the way DNA works, the sequencing and so forth. It's another thing, just to be brief. Psychology, the study of the mind, the brain, behavior, human behavior, how we are all linked to each other in regards to behavior. I act or do a certain thing, and it interacts with you and how you act and you behave. If I frown at you, you're probably going to frown back at me because you're going to think that I have an attitude towards you. If I smile at you, most likely you're going to smile back at me because you interpret my smile as a gesture of friendliness. So just that whole idea that this humanity, everything is just intertwined, psychologically speaking, to me shows an intention. Because if we all evolved, which I believe we did, then each one of us would have evolved in our own way. And what I mean by that is that we will act and function within our own parameters, so to speak, and not be so intertwined and connected with each other to form societies and so forth. But yet, evolution in such a way to allow for this, so that we could form tribes and societies and so forth and coexist. And how the brain works with the senses, of course. Again, the intention. Why are we supposed to touch? Why are we supposed to see? Why are we supposed to smell, taste, and hear? Why? What is the point? Now, science cannot answer those questions because that goes into philosophy. So, philosophy is another reason, just studying the order, the logic of the universe and everything within it. To me, it was another indication that there's something intelligent behind this, something beyond us that we cannot truly understand, but yet it's so far yet so close. So quickly to answer that question, those are pretty brief explanation. Again, I could go more to depth, but it will take forever. I suggest you just get my book, Atheism is Stupid, and you could see more in depth of why I call atheism stupid and what led me to that conclusion and why I believe it, so forth. And that's just volume 1. Volume 2 is coming like soon. Then there's gonna be volume 3. It's probably gonna be 4 or 5 volumes if I could fit everything in. So my advice is to get the book, and you could, you want more details if I was too brief here, because again, I'm being brief because I don't want people to sit here and listen to me talking and then bored and then just stop the video and then not listen to the rest. So I want to go to the next question. Okay, this is a same question from the same account, Gautis Tot 44, and he or she writes, "What, if anything, would change your mind?" Now, I'm not sure what he or she's referring to, but I'm assuming it's about theism. Uh, what would change my mind on God? And again, evidence. If atheism can provide evidence that there is no God, then that would probably change my mind. Just like what Dr. Carl Sagan said, that he sees no evidence for the lack of existence of a God, because God can be relegated to different times and places and so forth. And we don't know enough about the universe and everything to rule out God. I'm paraphrasing him. So Carl Sagan had the same idea that he did not see any strong evidence that supports atheism. And that's a big problem with atheism. If you're an atheist and you're going around saying that God does not exist, that God is a myth, and you don't offer anything to back that up, and nobody's going to believe you. That's why atheists are probably one of the most hated groups of people in the world, because they go around with this smugness, feeling that they have all the answers, yet they do not. That's a big problem for atheism. So atheism struggles to keep its people. It has the lowest retention rate because it lacks evidence. And ironically, it projects that same sentiment to theists by charging them that they lack evidence for God. When we have Aquinas, we have Augustine, we have all these different philosophers and scientists who have written books and papers offering all kinds of evidence and arguments for the existence of God. To go around and say that God doesn't exist, or that there's no evidence for God when there's all these different content out there, To me, it's just dishonest and ludicrous. Does not make any sense to me at all. Why anybody would adhere to that kind of stance or position, because there's so much information out there on God and proving God and giving evidence for God and giving arguments for God. Yet there's very little, well, actually, there's none from atheists showing that there is no God. Now, granted, they offer all these different arguments and the problem of evil, alleged imperfections in nature, and whatnot. But these arguments are weak. They are based on straw man arguments, arguments that reflect the ignorance of the atheists and not the non-existence of God. So that will be mainly what will change my mind is if there's evidence. If Lawrence Krauss could present evidence, or any other physicist could present evidence that there are multiverses out there, and that each multiverse has its own different physical properties and whatnot, and that's all there is. What we consider reality is just a universal bubble floating in whatever, and nearby us are other universes colliding with us, and that those collisions are creating even more universes. If you could provide evidence for that, that is all there is, that there's nothing more to reality, to the universe, then you possibly disprove God. Because if you prove that that's all there is, there's nothing more beyond that, then you pretty much ruled out God. But to date, that has not happened. So atheism has a dilemma. Now let's go on to the next question. Okay, the same account, he or she asks, how do you determine if an action is moral or immoral? Now, there's different ways I can answer this. Naturally, from the Catholic perspective, we are hardwired to be moral creatures via the natural law. So we are born with this idea that there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. So that's the simple explanation. And of course, that comes from God. That's what the Catholic position will be. Now, from a scientific perspective, obviously physics doesn't deal with that. Biology does not really deal with that, depending on unless it deals with psychology, but definitely psychology does deal with that. With behavior. So from that scientific perspective, morality in us. Now, science does not know where it really came from, but it does acknowledge that morality is hardwired in us. And there was a study a couple years ago where a psychologist, he had a group of babies who served as the variables, the independent and the variable and whatnot, and the dependent variable. And what they did was, with one baby, with one infant, they would show a puppet show with nice, cute little puppets, like from Sesame Street type, Elmo or not, but not exactly Elmo, or cute and whatnot, like Sesame Street. And they played, and in front of the infants, they did a show. And in one of the shows, the two puppets will play with each other and have fun. And the kids will see that and they will clap and they will smile and laugh, and they will have a great time watching this puppet show. Then, with another group, they showed the same puppet show, but one of the puppets was a bad guy. He would steal from the other puppet in the show. Now, something interesting happened. The babies that were watching that show weren't so amused. They weren't having it. They weren't giggling and whatnot. And they actually showed they have faces of concern. What the heck am I watching? Type of face. And then at the end, they went through each other babies, each of the infants, toddlers, and whatnot, and they showed them the two puppets, and they told them which they were going to give them a puppet to take home. So they will give the to the group that saw the good show where the two puppets played. They will give the puppets to the kids, and the kids will probably take them, no questions asked. But to the other group that saw the show with the violence and the one puppet being the bad guy stealing from the other puppet and being evil, if you will, or bad. When they went to give the children the puppets to them, to give the puppets to the children, when they came around to the bad puppet, quote unquote bad puppet, the kids started freaking out, crying and avoiding it. That babies do know what right and wrong is. And these are babies that can't talk. They do not talk. They do not read. But yet they knew they were able to distinguish between good behavior and bad behavior. Now, how is that possible? Clearly, it is hardwired in us. Now, why would we say that God has something to do with that? Well, I mean, let's suppose that evolution allowed us to formulate morality, to develop it. Why did we develop it and not the other non-human animals? Because dogs could kill each other. I don't care. You want to call it your best friend or your sister or your brother. It's still a non-human animal. And it's still savage. It could snap at any moment, depending on its mood or rabies and whatnot, and it could attack you and kill you. Just like with the elephants. How many people are squashed to death with friendly elephants? Elephants who are trained to do not magic tricks, but circus tricks and whatnot. And they behave, they get fed, and they do the shows. And then just one day, they just grab the trainer and slam them or step on their head or something. Unpredictable. Or a lion bite somebody's head off. When previously they were playing around in a circus with no problem. Yet human beings are born with this ability to be moral or immoral. Why is that? Why was the human race singled out from all the other species on Earth? Because again, we all evolved from the same source. The tree of life, as Carl Sagan used to describe it, the different branches of evolution. How life steered itself into different ways, creating all these different species and family groups. So to me, it makes sense that there must have been someone that's beyond this, able to guide this process, and purposely wanted the human race to have this thing that we call morality. Why? So we could get along with each other, we could know what right from wrong, we could instill justice among ourselves. Therefore, next question. Okay, this question is maybe is a common one that atheists like to bring up. And it's the same person, Dantes taught 44. He or she asks, is the story of Noah's Ark meant to be literal or figurative? I wish there was a solid answer that the church gives for that. The church's position is that you could believe either way. Doesn't make a difference. Because the church understands the different styles of just different genres within the Bible. People books, and they forget that this book, this volume, is really a collection of books, of 73 books, 46 in the Old, in the Hebrew scriptures, and 27 in the New, in the Christian Catholic scriptures. So these are different books, and these books were written in different time periods by different people. So that's why people get confused when they try to read the Bible like if it was a regular book, like if it was a novel or something. Chapter 1, chapter 2. The Bible does not work that way. When the church compiled the Bible, put it together, the canon, the list, and put the order of how the Bible is supposed to go, they did it in a way that focuses on Christ. So we read from Genesis to Revelation, everything is dealing with Christ. It's focused on Christ. Christ is promised right there in Genesis. The woman and the offspring that's going to crush the serpent's head. Right there, from the very beginning, we get the promise of Christ. So the church purposely ordered the books in a way that person of Christ. Now, in regards to Noah's Ark, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Different parts of the book, or the books of the Bible, have different genres, like I said. Some use metaphors, some use literary devices, some use allegory, different styles, different prose of writing. When you're reading it, you have to try to read it carefully and realize what the author is trying to say. Now, some people think that the story of Noah's Ark is just a story that was made up to tell a story of how God saves people. Some people say that the images have symbolism. For example, the ark represents the Virgin Mary. We see that in the ark saving us. Some people use the ark to describe the church, that the church is Peter's ark, carrying us away from this flooded world of evil. So there's different ways that people interpret that. Then the question arises about the different similarities between the Noah's Ark story and Babylonian myths, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this Epic of Gilgamesh, you read it, is very similar to, not exactly similar, but similar. Certain pieces of it are similar to Noah's Ark, the story. And the story tells us that this council of gods who decide that they're going to flood the earth. And before they do that, they pick this person called Unapishtim. And they tell Unapishtim to gather animals in a square-shaped boat, a cube, like the Borg cube or something, I guess. I told them the story that after the flood and everything happens, the rain stops, Unapishtim releases a bird and then offers a sacrifice to the gods after everything was over. And we read the similar thing in Noah's Ark, the story in the Bible. We read how God chooses Noah says he's going to flood everybody, to take your sons and their wives, and he's going to build the ark, and then he's going to bring the animals from different species, male and female from each species, and whatnot. And the flood comes, and Noah, his family, and the animals are safe in the ark, and everybody else outside is screwed, is flooded to death. Then, after 40 days, Noah raises a raven and doesn't come back, so he assumes there's no land and dies. He does it again. Then he sends a dove, and then the dove returns back with a branch. So then he realizes, wait, that means the waters are receding, because if this dove was able to land and get a piece of branch, and that means that the waters are receding and the trees are starting to show. And then he offers a sacrifice to God. Now, what are we to make of these? Did the Bible steal the story? Well, not necessarily, because we have to remember and we have to think, why did these cultures write these stories about floods? And they all had their own versions, which are very similar to Noah's Ark, to the story of Noah's Ark. Now, to a historian, that will indicate that this event probably did happen. Because if all these different cultures far away, remember, there was no internet. There was no Facebook where you could post a status update and then everybody learns about it, or Facebook Live where you could put something on live and then it goes all over, what's the word, viral. There was none of that. No Twitter, no Periscope. There was none of that stuff. MySpace, emails, texting. There was none of that stuff. Yeah, these different cultures, these different civilizations had the same story. So that may be an indication that the flood did happen. And they wrote about it. Or maybe there were survivors of the flood and they wrote about it. They realized what happened and wrote about it and added their own twist and spin to it to make it more colorful. It's another possibility. But as we are able to study more geology, and thanks to the machines that we have today, computers and whatnot, geologists have discovered that there were glaciers that covered the Black Sea. And when these glaciers melted, they created a big splash of water coming down, a big rush of water, almost like if you break a dam and all the water just comes pouring out all over the place, knocking everything, covering everything. And these glaciers, when they melted, they just made a cascade effect, just going all over the place, flooding everything and everyone. So there is evidence that around the same time where the story of the Noah's Ark is written, and also the Epic of Gilgamesh and other stories, there is evidence from geology that there was a flood that took place around that time. Now, was it a worldwide flood? Did the whole world flood? They're still looking for evidence for that, but at least we have something. At least we have the story, the data regarding the Black Sea and the glaciers that melted. At least we have that, which corroborates with the account in Genesis about 7,000 years ago. And remember, another thing you have to indicate, that I have to indicate to you, that you have to take into account, is that the people in the ancient world, Mesopotamia, Israel, and so forth, they thought that was the world. They were not aware that we know of that there were other continents around. They were not aware of Asia and North America, South America, what we call North America, South America today. They were not aware of that. They those existed. To them, the land that they were was the world. Because again, they did not have planes, they did not have the technology to be able to travel all over the place. So what they saw, they thought that was it. There was nothing else beyond it. So when the Bible and these other stories say that the world was flooded, it's possible that when it says world, they're referring to their area, what they thought what the world was, because they had no idea there was another side of the world, another hemisphere. So they called their region the world. Another thing you have to take into consideration is the Hebrew. The Hebrew word for earth, just like in English, this is the same situation. The Hebrew word for earth is eretz, which means land, and it's interchangeable. So they could say eretz to mean the earth, the planet, or eretz to mean the land, the soil. And the same thing in English, we could say he put the seed deep into the earth. Now, that statement describes the soil. He took the dirt, the earth in his hand, and he poured it all over the place. In that context, I'm referring to the soil, the earth. But then there's the earth, the planet itself. Armstrong looked and he saw the earth from the moon. In that context, we understand that it's referring to the world, the planet, how it looks from space. So you also have to take that into consideration when they say flooded the earth. Did they mean the whole world, the whole planet, everything, all 7 continents, or the earth, the land? So that's another thing that you have to take into consideration. Pope Pius XII, he wrote in the encyclical Humani Generis, simple and metaphorical, quote, simple and metaphorical language adapted to the mentality of a people, little cultured, both state the principal truth which are fundamental for our salvation, and also gave a popular description of the origin of the human race and the chosen people, end quote. So here the Pope is saying that, the Bible can use metaphorical language that it's adapted to the mentality of the people. So the people back then could understand what was being explained to them. That God punished the world and whatnot. So that's why we see in the Bible different metaphors, allegories, and whatnot, because they are geared towards a people who are little cultured, not well educated, and whatnot, and learn via symbolism and whatnot. That could be the case with Noah's Ark. But again, we do have evidence that a flood did occur 7,000 years ago in the area. And then, if you believe in Christ, if you believe Jesus Christ is God, he seemed to have believed that the flood took place. In Matthew 24, verses 37 to 39, Jesus says, quote, and as in the days of Noah, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage, even till that day in which Noah entered into the ark. And they knew not till the flood came, and it took them all away. So also shall the coming of the Son of Man be, end quote. Now, is Jesus speaking because this flood happened? Or he's just referencing a story which the Jews know about and was passed on? Again, that is up to the person reading the story. The church has no official teaching on it. So again, it's up to the people what you want to believe, if it's a little story or figurative. Me, again, being from a scientific background, reading that there was a flood that happened 7,000 years ago and so forth, I lean towards that is a mix of both. So let me put it that way, that there is some history to it, but there's also some metaphor to it used to explain to the people a certain theme or message. Let's go to the next one. Okay, I think I put the same one again. I had to find it. Okay, here it is. Again, it's from the same Twitter account. What are your views on evolution and the biblical creation story? I mentioned this on my site, my website, www.sacerdotus.com. That I do believe. I think I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. I do believe in evolution. I do accept that we evolved due to adaptation and speciation and so forth, and of course natural selection. But I believe that process was intentional, and of course by God. And God wanted it to happen that way. I do not believe that God snapped his fingers and human beings appeared out of nowhere. Well, not, because that will contradict scripture, the tenses of scripture, because we know that Genesis is allegory. And it would just contradict the whole idea of God. It will make God too simple. Instead of a God, it will make God into a magician, like Pope Francis said a few years ago in 2015. I think he said that God did not wave a magic wand and everything appeared. Evolution shows intelligence. It shows a process of matter forming matter that was not living, becoming living tissue, or abiogenesis. To me, all of that shows that there is an intelligence that knew how to set all this up together to work in this way and to form the variety of animal life, plant life that we see in this world. And it's funny that out of everything that we search in the universe, this is the only planet with life, with plant life, animal life, human life. Yet there's all this space out there, all these different planets, and we have yet to detect anything. We have not found anything. Not even within our own solar system. We have not found anything. There is no reason to think that the life needs an atmosphere to form or needs water to form. It would be arrogant to even think that. That life is possible to develop even in hostile, what we consider hostile environments. But yet, this planet is the only one with life. I mean, come on. There has to be something to that. We have not found animals, plants, or creatures similar to human beings anywhere. Nor have we received, to my knowledge, any signals from them saying, hello, cousins, we're here. We have not received anything. So far, this planet is it. It has all these beautiful things, this diversity of animals and creation. It's very difficult to say that this just happened by itself and there's no God. Because if it happened by itself, then it should have happened everywhere else. Because the universe had the same amount, every part of the universe had the same amount of time to expand and form galaxies and planets and so forth. Just like our galaxy had it had the same amount of time, the same amount of matter and materials. What I mean by materials, I mean the elements in order to form. Yet Earth is the only planet with life. It makes you think. So yes, I do believe in evolution, but I do believe that God guided the whole process, that he was the programmer that programmed this algorithm that continues to develop and develop and develop and develop. Now, the biblical creation story, again, I know it to be allegory. And I disagree with people that say that the earth was created in 6 days and whatnot, because it just contradicts everything. And God is about truth, not about lies or distortion. So people that they believe in the 6th day, I mean, they're welcome to believe that. Again, the Catholic Church has no official position. They do accept evolution. I will say that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, does accept evolution, but they have not made a formal declaration of it, saying that, yes, evolution is what we're supposed to believe. The Church has yet to do this. They might do it in the future, who knows? But they do side on the side of evolution, not creationists, which Protestants, some fundamental Protestants adhere to. And even when you look at Genesis, if you read it carefully, it almost looks like it's describing the Big Bang and evolution. Because the first thing is, let there be light. Now, there was no sun or stars when the Big Bang occurred. There was nothing. Everything just exploded and started to cool down and develop stars, galaxies, and so forth. But guess what? Genesis says, let there be light. Guess what was the first particle in the universe when the Big Bang happened? The instant the Big Bang happened, the first particles to appear was photons, light. I mean, there's something interesting about that. You know, the scripture, the Genesis could have said, let there be water or let there be dirt. But yet the author wrote, let there be light, which corroborates with how we see the Big Bang as occurring based on the radiation model, where we could see back the best we can to the point of the Big Bang. The cosmic radiation, we know that photons were the first particles to appear. Light. Photons are light. So let's go quickly to the next question. Okay, this is from Alacritus Martin from Australia. And he writes, when you were an atheist, what was your best argument against theism? What made you abandon that argument? Okay, I mean, it's really hard to say a best argument because at the time I wasn't fighting theism. I just happened to be an atheist who got curious and studied and discovered that atheism was wrong. So it wasn't like I was out there fighting theism or trying to disprove it. I honestly did not care. I mean, in college campuses and whatnot, I saw priests, giving out ashes for Ash Wednesday and things like that. And I never went up to them and questioned them whatnot. I saw the Christian clubs, the Catholic clubs. A couple of times I got into arguments with them, especially when they tried to proselytize me. But as far as going and trying to start arguments with this, I really did not do that. I mean, there were a couple of times where I did visit a Christian club and, just to see what was questioned, and they got annoyed and whatnot. And say they were Catholic clubs. And they questioned them and they got annoyed because obviously they did not like to be questioned and they weren't prepared to answer them. But as far as the best argument against theism is, the best argument against theism would be, like I mentioned before, space and time, the universe itself. If it could be proven that the universe did not need a cause to begin as the Big Bang, meaning that there's other universes out there that collided and that collision caused our universe, then I think that would be the strongest argument against theism. But then again, you could say, well, God made all the different universes. That he did not just make our universe, he probably made other universes. But if you could prove that all there is just that, a whole bunch of universes floating like bubbles, and there's nothing else or no one else, then I think that would be the strongest argument against theism. Because then the theist will be on the defensive. The theist will have to explain, well, where is God? If all we could find are universe, multiverses bumping into each other, creating even more universes, and that's all there is, there's nothing beyond that, then where is God? It's like if somebody tells you, oh, the blue shirt is in the closet, and you go in the closet and you start looking all over the place and the blue shirt's not there, Then you go to the person who told you that the shirt was there, and you say, well, where's the shirt? The shirt's not there. And then the person goes and checks and looks for the shirt and sees that the shirt is not there. What's the person going to do? How is he or she going to defend him or herself if the shirt is not there? So I think that will be the strongest argument against theism. But again, no physicist has been able to prove that. Nobody. It's all hypothetical. And what made you abandon the argument? Well, again, there's no evidence for it. There's no proof of it. The Big Bang is all we have for now, and it makes sense that everything was compressed and exploded to form the universe that we have today. And I abandoned it because if there was nothing before the Big Bang, then that means there was nothing before the Big Bang. So if there's nothing before the Big Bang, then there's no way there could be other multiverses or whatnot, because there was nothing. Remember, nothing caused it. So if nothing caused it, then that means there's nothing. And that argument doesn't make sense. You cannot say nothing caused the universe. It doesn't make sense. Like you cannot say nothing caused the accident. Of course something caused the accident. Otherwise the accident wouldn't have happened. So if you say nothing caused the universe, that's where the argument just falls apart. Because then you have to figure, what is nothing? If it's nothing, how can it cause something? How can nothing become something? It's not possible, based on the way we understand laws of physics. So that's why I abandoned the argument, because it's just, it falls on itself. It falls on its face, so to speak. Okay, the next question. And this is from Matt Shooting Squealer. How do you lose atheist ways of thinking? This becomes a problem if you can't find a rebuttal to something heard. Okay. The grammar's a bit off, but I'm trying to figure it out. How do you lose atheist ways of thinking? Well, I mean, you have to see a book. I mean, I could go briefly into it. I'm basically physics, science. Like I said before, I realized that there's something beyond what we think is. And what I mean by that is that the universe is just way too organized, way too complex to just have happened by itself. And then the principle of time, that the universe cannot be created by chance because there was no time before the Big Bang. And chance is a aspect of probability. So without time, there cannot be chance or probability. So you pretty much cannot say that the universe was caused randomly or by chance, because there was no time before the universe existed. So there was no way for probability to take hold, for chance to take hold, for randomness to take hold, because they need time. So that's when I started to really lose my atheist ways of thinking. I started to say, well, maybe there is something beyond us. So that's when I started to look into religion and God and so forth and whatnot. And Squealer says this becomes a problem when you can't find a rebuttal to something heard. I'm not too sure what he or she means by that, so I cannot really answer that. Let's try the next question. This is the last question, I believe. Okay, well, it's not really a question, but more like a comment. Best books or vids on biblical history. In history that tells of Romans adopting Christianity. The history seems in bits. I cannot really say this is the best book. I mean, what I do is I get different kinds of books and I read them all. And then I try to dissect them. I try to refute them based on all the different sources that I read. I say, well, this guy says this guy says this. And then I use another source to see which one is right. That's the way I work. And my research method. So I can't really say what's the best book or not, but there's different books. Michael Grant, who's an atheist scholar, and he writes about the Gospels and the New Testament and shows that they are reliable sources, historical or not. And as regard to Romans adopting Christianity, there's different books on history, church history. There's a lot of them out there. They're fairly good. Uh, Again, you have to take at least two or three of them and read them all, and then compare notes to see. Most likely, they all say the same thing in regards to when the Romans adopted Christianity. So that's how I would decide which one is the best book or videos. Whatnot. As far as the videos, I do not really watch videos. Whatnot. I don't even think they have those. But um, the books again, books are the best way to go, especially by historians, by theologians, by archaeologists, people that actually have degrees. I would not get books written by um, Michael Shermer or people like that who or the other guy, the one that started Freedom from Religion. I forgot his name, who claims he was a foreign pastor. These people don't have degrees in these fields, so they shouldn't be commenting. I mean, they're entitled to their own opinion, but that's where you should leave it at, their own opinion. It's not fact. It's not based on facts. So I would go with scholars, people who actually have reputable degrees that from reputable institutions, and then not just rely on their source, but get others to see what they say and compare them all, at least 3 or 4 books, and read them all and see if they all agree with each other, or one disagrees. Try to find out why that person disagrees, and see if the person is wrong based on the other sources that you found. So the history seems in bits. Well, that's with every kind of history. That's not just with biblical or Christian history in the early centuries. That's with everything else. I mean, Greek history, Roman history, Mesopotamia, African, different cultures in Africa, South America, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayan, everything is in bits. We do not have because they just did not document everything well, or they did, it was destroyed, or we just have copies of them, or it was just expensive to get papyrus, and document everything. So again, that's not the fault of our primitive brothers and sisters from the past. They just had what they had in order to document things. So that's the last question, I think. I do not see anything else. Can I take a quick break just to make sure there's not other questions? Okay, well, I mean, that's all that are questions that I see right now. So hopefully next time I'll get even more questions. But these questions were pretty good. They show genuine interest in learning and questioning and whatnot. And hopefully I was able to answer them the best I could. Again, I don't want to go really into details because people get bored and whatnot. And I tend to talk a lot. If you have not noticed, I tend to be very loquacious, and it's a bad habit. But when you read a lot and you have all this stuff in your brain, it's hard to contain it. So you just start shooting words out there, and you cannot stop. I'm sure all you brainiacs out there, nerds out there, can relate. There's so much stuff in my brain right now. Reading, I'm constantly reading. There's never a moment when I'm not reading. So I love learning. I love learning new things, and like I love educating, putting that information out there. So but then again, I had to understand that human beings have a short attention span, so I cannot just stay talking for hours and expect people to just sit there and absorb it. Of course, after 5-10 minutes, according to psychologists, the mind starts to wander. So I try to keep it short this time, get to the point, and the information, make it brief, so that you could get the information that you need from the questions. So again, thank you for listening. God bless, Mary keep, and on to the next broadcast.